Thank you, Councillor Martin. Chairman and Vice, yes. I know my place. Gentlemen, if you're getting too warm, feel free to remove your jackets if you so desire. And ladies, no, ladies haven't got jackets. Before we commence the meeting, I'd like to draw your attention, especially the members of the public, to the fire regulations on the screen behind me and the screen facing the public gallery. Could everybody please ensure that mobile phones are switched to silent, and councillors, I'd remind you to speak directly into the microphone and make sure your card is pushed firmly into the console. So if we move on to the items of business on the agenda, the first one is the minutes. The minutes of our last meeting have been on the table for 30 minutes. Have I your permission to sign them as a true record? Thank you. There was one action arising from those minutes regarding the application we considered at Godalming Railway Station. And Beth, if you'd like to explain what happened on that one.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will recall at the last meeting that several issues relating to the Godalming Station application were raised, which were outside the scope of the planning application. And there was the desire for members, the desire from members that communication was made with the rail operator to pass on the concerns of the committee and indeed the council. I can confirm that the head of planning and economic development has undertaken this, and we are now waiting a response. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Beth. Amy, any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Cole, Councillor Hegan, Councillor Sadler, and also Councillor Penny Rivers has advised that she might be running late due to a Godalming mayoral engagement.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chairman. Yourself, Councillor Ellis, has declared a pecuniary interest in items B3 and B4 and will leave the chamber while these items are considered. Councillor Martin has declared a personal non-pecuniary interest in item B1 as a close friend of his lives at Netherwood Court, Filmer Grove, and he will leave the chamber for this item and not take part in the discussion or vote.
Thank you. Councillor Cossa.
Yes, Chairman, I also wish to declare a non-pecuniary interest on item 8.2, and as with Councillor Martin, I will leave the chamber for that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the public or questions from members, Amy?
Thank you, Chairman. None received.
Any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since the last meeting, Beth?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware that the referendum for the Godalming and Farncombe neighbourhood plan was held yesterday, and the vote was very much in favour of making that plan. Notwithstanding the fact that the plan has not yet been made, it now forms a part of the development plan and therefore can be afforded full weight in your considerations tonight. These issues have already been addressed due to the emerging plan within your reports tonight, and nothing therefore changes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Beth. So the next item, item 7, is an objection to a tree preservation order number 02/2019, trees on land at Wheeler Street, Wheeler Lane, Whitley. And I'd ask Steve Tester to present this item, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Objection has been made to the making of the tree preservation order. So in accordance with delegated powers, the matter has been brought before this committee for determination and hopefully confirmation. The committee is being asked to confirm this order on officers' recommendations. The TPO was made in January 2019 and includes 2 groups of trees on the former site of Wheeler Street Nurseries. Group 1 is a group consisting of 3 limes. This is the subject of the actual objection and is shown with a red arrow. And the second group is Group 2, consisting of 10 oak trees, shown with a blue arrow. Just for the committee, this is a picture taken from inside Wheeler Street Nurseries, facing Group 2, the 10 oak trees boundaries on the west side. And then photograph number 1 is Group 1 of the free limes, again taken from Wheeler Street nurseries, facing northwest. The objection, the trees have been assessed in accordance with the Council's adopted tree guidelines, and the TPO was made following permission being granted for the Wheeler Street redevelopment, WA 20/2018/1688, which is for the erection of 18 dwellings, including 5 affordable dwellings. The development site will involve build processes in relative close proximity to the trees. It is further considered that the planned relationships with the new development will be in close proximity to the retained protected trees. And in our experience, it is often the desire of new owners and occupiers to excessively prune and or remove trees following successful retention throughout development. The objection, a single objection was upheld by a local resident. The objection was made not on the protection of the 10 oak trees, Group 2, but on the Group 1 of the 3 lime trees. And the objector felt that the trees should not have been protected because they had no amenity value. The trees have not been historically pruned, or as they term it, kept under control, and are overhanging the objector's property. And due to that overhang, detritus from the trees, e.g. leaves, twigs, seeds, etc., fall within their garden and is considered a nuisance and annoyance to them. I have had further telephone conversation with the objector, and he has asked me to reinforce, if you haven't already, to read his letter of objection, because he felt we slightly misrepresented him in the report. In officer's response to these objection points, it is considered that the trees are at the moment intermittent and limited amenity value. However, with the completion of the development, the trees will have increased presence and increased amenity value, especially to the residents and visitors of the new properties once completed. The relationship of these mature lime trees is to the north of the objector's garden, and is a long-standing relationship. As you can see in this photograph I've taken from the rear of number 4 Redvers Cottage, there is a slight overhang into the objector's garden. However, advice has already been afforded to the owner of number 4 Redvers Cottage, which is the property immediately adjacent to these trees, and a tree work application TM/2019/0062 was subsequently consented to. As part of this consented works, permission for the reduction of that crown spread of all 3 trees over the gardens was approved and consented to. This would significantly reduce the overhang and also the effect of detritus falling into the objector's garden. It is officer's conclusion and recommendation to the committee that the points raised, though reasonable, is not considered to override the public amenity value presented by the trees, and could be suitably dealt with using the pre-existing consent. It is therefore recommended and proposed that the Tree Preservation Order 02/2019 is confirmed with modification only to the TPO title, and no changes to the protection afforded to both groups, Group 1 and Group 2. The proposed change in the title is Trees on Land at Wheeler Lane, Whitley. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. I paid not 1 but 2 site visits to Wheeler Street Nurseries as it is now, because I had concerns about the proximity of the proposed dwellings to the trees, or maybe the proximity of the trees to the proposed dwellings. I am grateful to Mr. Tester for a conversation we had this afternoon, because I don't think I have concerns on the part of the resident at number 3 Redvers Cottages, who's the person who's brought this objection to us. But actually, my concern is, well, we haven't got a plan here of the proposed layout for the new houses. Oh, yes, you have put it up there. Thank you very much. And that was in response to my request, so thank you. My concern was that I couldn't tell which were market houses and which were affordable. And I think I've been reassured that well, I would like somebody to confirm which are the affordable houses, please.
Marie?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that it's the 5 properties in the southwestern corner, which is just being shown now. They're the affordable units.
And Chair, if I could just confirm, the tenure of the properties is immaterial to this consideration. I know, but I need to reinforce that the public amenity value is exactly that, and the tenure split of an adjacent development should really bear no weight in your considerations. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Baker hasn't finished yet. So.
Do you mind if I continue?
Please do, yes.
Thank you. So my greater concern is for the property in the northwest corner, which is to the southern end of those properties. I think that the tree canopy, well, it will need to be considerably reduced if it's not to have a really quite oppressive effect on the rear of that house. And I know that there will be sun from the east, but it is the rear of the house, which is the private area, which is going to be very shaded. Having said all this, I have also heard that there is a boundary dispute, I think, where the limes are, and I basically take the view that, having done all this research, that the best thing is to protect all the trees, but I still do hope that that house that I'm not quite sure what number it is. I think I did know, but anyway, the one in the northwest corner, but the southern end, which is very shaded by the oak tree, if regard can be had to really making a difference to the crown when if somebody comes back with an application for pruning. But in fact, because of the concerns over the boundary, I would be happy for the TPO to be granted.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Since we have that map, and that's, I think, is only outline planning permission, if I remember. It's not detailed planning permission, so the house points or where the houses are may change considerably. However, could I just, do I understand the oak trees in question on the top left-hand side, and the lime trees are on the bottom to the right-hand side? Is that correct before I go any further?
Could you point them out with a cursor, do you think, please, the oaks and the limes?
Yes, of course, Chairman. The oak trees are situated on this western boundary here. They're approximately this group here. The lime trees, this tree I'm just circling now is actually sort of a misnomer. It's no longer there. It wasn't one we were proposing to protect. The 3 lime trees in question are these ones I'm just circling there. If I may, regarding Councillor Baker's query, I believe that's plot number 6 being proposed there. And If, Chairman, if it's okay, if I could address Councillor Baker's comments.
Can we just let Councillor Martin, and then we can deal with both at the same time if there's any further queries?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have a lot of sympathy with house owners and large trees. And what is that? Does those houses at the top left, is that pointing west, is it? So in the setting sun, for instance, will be completely taken away by very tall oak trees. Now, of course, the developer could choose then to change things and put a new planning application to move them further away. But and we put a TPO on it, becomes very difficult to get agreement to reduce them in height and so on and so forth. So I have to say, I sympathise with the feeling of having these lovely trees, but I also sympathise with the future residents who are going to be perhaps finding them to be the bane of their lives. So I'm a little bit 50-50 on whether I'm happy with this particular TPO request.
Steve, did you wish to continue with your reply to Councillor Baker, please?
Yes, Chairman. Perhaps if I could just respond to Councillor Martin first, if that would be acceptable. In regards to shading, and it is something I discussed with Councillor Baker today, due to the height of the trees, most likely any sort of shading effect would be actually benefited or significantly reduced in shading wise by actual removal of the undergrowth beneath the crowns of the trees. As the photos showed, the crowns of the trees are fairly high already. So by removing some of that undergrowth beneath, which isn't being proposed to be protected permanently, you could have sunlight filtrate underneath the crowns and into the amenity area of the trees. I'm also minded that significantly reducing tall trees or even well-established trees is against modern pruning techniques unless there's actual structural reason or if it's absolutely necessary due to proximity of the trees. But that's not to say that in some instances we don't consent to that, if that answers your question. Going back to Councillor Baker's question, in regards to plot 6, I hope partly, as we discussed on the phone and also as I've just explained to Councillor Martin, the removal of some of that undergrowth, which could be done with the landowner's agreement, would benefit all the properties. The protection of the trees from before they commence development and subsequently selling the plots is to ensure that the new owners do not have a excessive view on removal of trees, and it would allow the council reasonable control over what works are carried out to those said trees. In regards to the boundary dispute, that wouldn't affect the placing of this TPO, and all relevant landowners, current and potentially future, would be notified, and it doesn't make a difference whose property it is on in that respect. Hope that answers those queries.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Chair. So just so I'm absolutely clear on this, in terms of we're only materially considering who it's impacting at this the tree is there. It doesn't matter what houses are there now or in the future. It's the order as it currently stands. So as far as I understand this, effectively there is mitigation that can be undertaken in terms of the crown underneath to allow light through. There's a consent at number 4 to allow pruning according to a certain specification. And so effectively, if all those things are done, most of the issues raised in the objection are likely mitigated. And so effectively, we should be confirming this order.
Steve?
Thank you, Councillor. In respect to the TPO, it's a public amenity point of view. Yes, you're absolutely right. Whether what properties are there now or in the future, we're looking at guaranteeing the protection of amenity trees, which will increase in amenity value as the properties are developed. In regards to underneath the understory, as I alluded to, that isn't protected, so that would be a matter between respective landowners, yes. It wouldn't be a matter we deal with necessarily.
May I just ask a very quick follow-up on the consent, is it TM 2019-0062 given to number 4? Are only number 4 allowed to enact that consent, or are number 3 allowed to enact it? Or is it on, I don't know where the land boundary is and whether they'd be trespassing or something like that.
Steve.
In regards to that, anyone can apply for tree works. The common law right, so to speak, is that you could prune back to your boundary line. So number 3 at the moment could only prune it back a marginally small amount to their boundary line without the permission of number 4. If they sought number 4's permission, then they could enact all the works that has been consented to in agreement with number 4.
So that would be a completely separate, potentially civil matter between number 3 and 4, completely immaterial to this.
Indeed, yes.
In which case, then I will be, unless otherwise persuaded, voting to confirm this order. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to comment before we move to the recommendation? No. Good. So the recommendation, it is recommended that the Tree Preservation Order 02/2019 applying to a group of 3 lime trees and 10 oak trees be confirmed with modification only to the TPO title. This is recommended following clarification of the site address. The proposed change to the title is from Trees on Land at Wheeler Street, Wheeler Lane, Whitley to Trees on Land at Wheeler Lane, Whitley. All those in favour?
It's 9, Chairman.
And against?
1, Chairman.
Thank you. So that recommendation is approved. So we move on to applications for planning permission, and just a note that should any site inspections become necessary as a result of our deliberations tonight, these will be held on Tuesday the 6th of August 2019 at a time to be agreed in writing. Steve, do you wish to leave us? Thank you for your assistance this evening. That's right.
No, I was just going to spot the place.
Oh, okay. All right. When the music stops, anybody that hasn't got a chair? So, the first planning application is item B1, our reference WA 2019-0183, Netherwood Court, Filmer Grove, Godalming. And the proposal is for the erection of an extension to provide 2 additional dwellings along with alterations to the elevations and associated parking. And Marie is going to present this application. Marie.
Thank you. The application is for the erection of an extension to provide 2 additional dwellings, as well as alterations to the elevations. Here are the existing and the proposed block plans. You can see that there's no change to the footprint of the building. The only change is to the parking. There are 2 additional spaces shown in this area. This is the existing south elevation. See, it has a flat roof of 1960s design. It's brick with white and blue elements. And this is the proposed south elevation. So the extension would be to create a 4th floor to create the 2 flats. The extension itself would have a pitched roof with dormer windows and balconies with glass balustrades. Amendments to the elevations include some timber cladding, shown here and here, as well as new windows and doors. These are the proposed eastern and western elevations and the northern elevation. This is the proposed floor plan and roof plan. So with the floor plan, there's 1 flat on each side. These are the living areas here, with doors opening out onto the balcony areas, and then 2 bedrooms in these areas. The balconies would have privacy screens to the sides here and here. These are photos of the existing building, so the southern and the northern elevations. This is showing the adjacent block of flats, Brockton, to the east of Netherwood Court. As you can see, it also has balconies, has a flat roof design, and some windows on the side. Existing and proposed views from the south. So looking towards the Godalming hillsides in the background. This is a montage of the proposed building, so that's the roof element there. And these are photographs taken from the existing balcony at second floor level, so the highest level at the moment, and from the roof of the existing building. And you can clearly see the difference in levels with the properties on Chalk Road to the south. Essentially, you can only see the roof of the buildings. There's a section drawing which has been provided by the applicant to show the relationship with those properties on Chalk Road. There's a distance of around 25 metres. The difference in levels that I've already referred to, and the balconies are actually set well back. Matters for consideration are visual impact, residential amenity, highways and parking. And just got a couple of updates. The report refers to a bat informative. This has not been included as the building has a flat roof and is therefore unlikely to house bats. And the report refers to a side window at Brockton, but as shown in the photographs, there's actually more than one window in the side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marie. Members? So I'm going to have to consult my little picture guide here. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I've read through the documentation, and I'm grateful for the comments that have been made. I do know this area, this part of my ward. In terms of, I mean, it strikes me that there are sort of two key issues that we need to be looking at with regard to this particular application. One is the visual impact, and the other is the parking from the from what we've been looking at. In terms of the building itself, the building itself is already actually fairly dominant on the hillside, as the images show. With a pitched roof, of course, it would be, I think it was 2.9 metres higher, so the height would be increased. But the actual visual impact in terms of the aesthetics of the building would suggest that actually the building would look considerably less ugly than it does at the moment. And therefore, you know, in that sense, the additional height, I think, would be mitigated by the overall appearance of the building. The query that I would have would just be in relation to parking. There are 2 additional parking spaces rather than the 4, which would normally be in keeping with the now a little bit more weighty Godalming and Farncombe neighbourhood plan requirements. This is not an area where there are particular parking issues, so it doesn't weigh particularly heavily in my judgment. However, the question I would have would be in relation to EV charging points in relation to flat developments, because my understanding is that there are no existing EV points in that particular parking area. If we are creating an additional 2 parking spaces, should we not be putting a condition in terms of EV charging.
Councillor Williams, I think you find condition 6 covers that point.
In terms, yep, yeah. Yes. I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Follows.
Thank you for pointing out condition 6 as well. I mean, so, just to confirm, is that the 2 new spaces will get them, none of the others? Right. Okay. So that's absolutely fine. And the main issue I had with this originally was going to be the increase in the scale of it and the impact on the skyline. I actually entirely agree with Councillor Williams. It actually does improve, I think, the view of it, and therefore is perfectly reasonable within the bounds of what we intended with the skyline part of the Godalming and Farncombe neighbourhood plan. So actually, I have no problem with this unless anybody convinces me otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Floyd-Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder if you could help this car parking situation. I've been to 2 meetings in the last 3 weeks, heard 5 applications, and on 3 of them, the car parking quota has not been met. And I just wondered if that's a trend or whether or not that's just unlucky.
Beth, you wish to address that?
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly for this application, Councillor Floyd-Douglas, we need to pay particular regard to the location of this site. It's equidistant from Godalming Station and Farncombe Station. Farncombe amenities, Godalming amenities. It is sustainable in many ways, aside from the car parking issue. So car parking, whilst it is material and there are standards, we do need to be looking at the extraneous issues about how people can get around, etc. In terms of the other application sites, I'm not sure which ones you're talking about. Perhaps this isn't the most appropriate forum, but I'm happy to take this offline with you.
Yes, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm concerned about parking as well. I know that it is a private road, but as just said, a lot of the developments we've listened to, parking seems to have dropped quite sharply. Now, there are 2 flats which should have 4 spaces, but there is no mention at all about how many spaces the flats there already have got. Because if there is a shortfall in them, then that must be a concern.
Marie.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that there are 20 existing parking spaces for the 12 flats, and that the spaces are not allocated at the moment and they're not proposed to be allocated.
Thank you. Councillor Follows, you wish to come back?
Extremely quickly, and really just to, if Councillor Floyd-Douglas is happy with this, could you share the parking guidance that you're offering in general to all the members of this committee, because I'd be quite interested in that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Beth, do you have a wish to comment? Okay, members. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, sorry. Just a piece of clarification. In paragraph 10.6, you're referring to trees, and it's talking about trees on site and surrounding the site. Somebody's talking to me somewhere. Surrounding the site would need to be sufficiently protected. Does this application here, is it intended to protect trees outside of the boundaries of the property?
Officers.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the condition is to protect off-site trees during construction.
Chair, if I may.
Steve?
I believe I actually had a minor part in the consultation of this one. It was mainly steered by my manager, Andy Cloud, but it is indeed to protect trees off-site. There was, I believe, a TPO tree to the, as we're looking at closer to the roadside. And on-site there is very limited, if actually any, protected trees, and it's only the exterior off-site trees we're looking at protecting from such development as using a crane on site and making sure it's sufficient distance away from said crowns of trees.
Thank you.
Beth?
And notwithstanding Steve's comments, thank you, Steve, there is a condition 2, which relates to trees within the site and protection and, yeah, basically protection of those trees on site. Trees outside of the site, outside of the ownership, unfortunately, they lie outside of the control of this planning application, but if there are considered to be any trees of particular public amenity value, then it is open to members to bring those to officers' attention for assessment.
Approximately where are these trees? I mean, are they going to be affected by the parking bays, or are they at the other end? Are they between Chalk Road and the back of the Netherwood Court? I'm just thinking of parking spaces compressing the ground and that sort of thing, which
Yeah,
you
no,
guys
I
worry
was
about.
trying to seek your attention.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I believe, yes, there are a number of trees along the railway lines which wouldn't be directly affected because of the hard standing, and including the additional parking bays, that at the moment is sufficient distance away from any of the protected trees. Any of the off-site trees, so that wouldn't be an issue. I believe the protected trees, or what remains of the protected trees, are all to the south on this on these plans shown. And it, again, as I said, we were just minded to see how they were going to store materials on site, where I presume they are going to probably need to use a crane, where that would go, and make sure the swing of it, again, would be sufficient distance and the trees around the site would be protected.
Thank you. Members, any further comments before we move to the recommendation? The recommendation is that subjects to conditions 1 to 7 and informatives 1 to 4, permission be granted. All those in favour of the recommendation? Sorry, Councillor Baker, you left the room, so you don't get to vote. I'm sorry. You left the room during the discussion. It's okay.
That's unanimous, Chairman, anyway.
Thank you. So we move on to a second item, B2, application reference WA 3019. Oh, that's clever. 2019 0667. All those capable of time travel, please see me last week. Oh yes. Yeah. We'll just let Councillors Martin and Costa in. Bless you. See ya. How nice of you to join us, Councillor Martin. So, item B2, reference WA 2019-0667, 15 Braemar Close, Godalming, and the proposal is for erection of extensions and alterations following demolition of garage and conservatory, and Tracy is going to present this application.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site is located on the southern side of Braemar Close. It's within the developed area of Godalming. This location plan is inclusive of the proposed developments. As you can see with this aerial view, this is the application site here. I'd just like to take this opportunity to draw your attention to the size of the dwellings in the vicinity of the area in comparison to the small scale of the site as existing. These photographs show on the left the existing dwelling of 15 Braemar Close. The photo on the right depicts the general development within the close. These are the existing elevations of 15 Braemar Close and the plans. The existing site comprises of a detached two-storey dwelling with a detached garage. The site features garden areas to both the front and the back. The application proposes the demolition of the existing detached garage and the conservatory at the rear, the erection of a part single and part two-storey side extension to the southwest elevation, the erection of a two-storey front extension, the erection of a two-storey and part single-storey rear extension spanning the width of the existing property, and the addition of roof lights into the side roof slopes. These photos show the relationship of the neighbouring properties to the application site. The photograph on the left shows number 16 Braemar Close. The photograph on the right shows number 14. The previous photographs were from the front of the property. These photographs depict the rear of the property. Two photographs on the left are showing number 14, and the photograph on the right, number 16. The main matters for consideration in this application is the impact on visual amenity and the impact on the residential amenity. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. The reason we're seeing this particular application is because I called it in, and I felt when I first looked at the plans that this was a case of significant overdevelopment. I have to say that I have spoken to the neighbours on either side of this application. I've spoken also extensively to the applicant, and I have been in consultation with the officers. On first sight, it does look a very large extension. The house comes forward of the building line, which is set by the properties on either side, although there's not, the building line in the front is no more than that. It's, if you look more extensively, there is no building line other than for those three, and you deal with that in your application. It also goes back quite a long way. There is a degree of overlooking towards number 14, and that has caused some considerable issues with the residents at number 14. I did say I would represent the people who live at number 14 and just say, draw your attention, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that the occupants there are not particularly happy with the recommendation or the report, and they feel that the biggest issue is that the application is overbearing and and unneighbourly, and they're concerned that the extension will result in a two-storey wall extending 1.7 metres beyond their bedroom window and only a metre from it. And they also have a concern that there will be a terracing effect on the front of the three properties there, which they're not happy with. And also, I think they are concerned at the way in which the house at the back does extend back quite significantly. So I have to say that when I take everything into account and I see the other houses in Braemar Close and see the degree to which they have been developed, indeed number 14 itself is the subject of some considerable development. Whilst I feel that number 15, the application that we're looking at, is on the big side and in my view is a bit marginal, I feel that on balance I will go with the officer's recommendation and support the recommendation, even though I'm not totally convinced. I do feel some concerns, but I'd be interested to see what others might have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Chair. I think the issue with the overdevelopment, when we discuss overdevelopment, how far, what's the sort of scope of where we consider that? Is it overdevelopment within that particular plot or within the sort of adjacent area to a degree?
Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. We take the overdevelopment at different levels. We look at whether it's an overdevelopment of the plot and whether that is consistent with the vicinity of the area, the natural pattern of build within the local area. If you look at Braemar Close, it's not uncommon for each plot to build to within 1 metre of their boundary at two-storey levels. And in regards to the overbearing of these neighbours, currently the existing property is small within the plot. The proposal does extend it significantly, and we have taken a balanced view that it would not cause significant harm enough to warrant a refusal.
Thank you. You actually answered several of the questions I was about to ask. I mean, looking at that particular picture, the distance between each house, that's something that is happening in many of the other properties. It is by far and away not the biggest property in the close. There are plenty of others there, I imagine, many of which have been subject to extensions in the past themselves, and as Councillor Martin has mentioned, so has 14 by the looks of it. So my personal view here would be to in this case, to go with the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Tracy.
I'd just like to add one more thing. In regard to number 14, it is a two-storey dwelling. There have been significant additions of dormers to the rear. This appears from the rear to be a three-storey dwelling, so which is also something that we have taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
If I may just come back, I think this particular house that is the subject of the planning application tonight is pretty much as it was when it was built in the 1950s, I think, or if it wasn't the 50s, it was just before the Second World War rather than just after. So this is almost the last house to be subject to any development. So you know, it's, I think the only other point that I would make is that the neighbours at number 14 asked for a series of planning conditions to be put should the application be successful. I know that I've communicated that to Tracy, and she feels that those planning applications requested would not be appropriate. But I'd just like to say that I've actually requested those and they've been considered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. I did go out and have a look at this site because I was concerned about the fact that it was marginal. And actually, I think it's a bit sad that there's a proposal to enlarge it. I do understand the need for people to expand their accommodation. I think this, at the size it is, it sits very well in the street scene. whether it is bigger or smaller than other properties around, I still think, as it is, it's probably the best it could be from the appearance point of view. But I do take the point that I think the houses flanking it have been extended, certainly number 14 considerably. And while I did speak actually to the occupier of number 14 and to the applicant, because they'd had burglaries and they came shooting out to know what I was doing, waving papers around. However, I just think perhaps I don't think I would feel inclined to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think you look like a potential burglar either, Councillor Baker. So, members, if any further comments, or shall we move to the recommendation? Right, so the recommendation is that, subject to conditions 1 to 7 and informatives 1 to 4, permission be granted. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you, councillors. Now, I am about to leave the chamber, but before I do, we did ask for somebody to volunteer to act as chairman for the last two items, and Councillor Baker has put her name forward. Is everybody happy for Councillor Baker to chair the end of this meeting? Thank you. I'd invite Councillor Baker to come up here and join us then, or join Amy anyway.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to B3, which is WA/2019/0595, erection of extension and alterations, including a new pitched roof to replace flat roof of existing extension at 7 Copse Edge, Elstead. There is an officer who is going to present. Tracy, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair has just stated, this is an application for the erection of extensions and roof alterations to an existing side extension. The application is located on the northern side of Copse Edge, which is a cul-de-sac arrangement of dwellings in Elstead. These photos show the front, which is the left-hand photo of 7 Copse Edge, and the photo on the right is the rear. These are existing elevations. As you can see, the element of flat roof with a small element of sort of a faux pitched roof to the front are currently in existence. There's current plans showing the roof arrangement also. This is the proposed elevations. As you can see on the top left, the proposal is to erect a 2-storey rear extension. This measures 3.8 metres in depth and spans a 10.1 metre width. There's also amendments to the roof. As you can see from the front elevation at the bottom of the page, the roof is significantly altered from the flat roof that is currently in existence. The proposed plans. The The roof plan is slightly confusing as it includes the current roof arrangement with the proposed roof arrangement on also. The most important matters for consideration in this application is the impact on visual amenity and the impact on residential amenity.
Thank you very much. I will just say that I did pay a visit to this site myself because of the reasons for Councillor Else not taking the matter. So, who would like to speak? Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading through this again, I note that it is supported by the local parish council. I don't see any neighbour objections either, which would be the groups of people I would particularly be looking for in terms of impact on residential amenity. I don't personally believe that it has a particular impact on either the SPA or any of the biodiversity aspects that we're referring to here either. So unless anybody has any other particular considerations, I will be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I think the extension is a great improvement over what is there today. So I'd be very happy to approve and would so propose that we accept the recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Could I just say that I did speak to the next door neighbour this afternoon. She hadn't liked to raise the matter with the applicant, who is her next door neighbour. She was concerned about the roof light on the, I think it's the northeast side. I was just going to say that in my experience, people do not put their noses up against roof lights to peer out and see what their neighbours are doing. I have roof lights potentially overlooking my garden, and I know that they are not doing that. So perhaps as a reassurance to this neighbour, we could put an extra condition on. I think I will take the officer's view on this and see if we could have it obscure glazed.
Thank you, Chair. Given that roof lights, generally speaking, where permitted development rights are intact, can be installed subject to obscure glazing up to 1.7 metres above floor level, internal floor level, I think that would be reasonable. On the understanding that members would consider that without it harm would be caused, planning harm would be caused by way of overlooking.
Thank you. Councillor Costa and then Councillor Martin and then Councillor Follows. Thank you.
I'm just merely going to say, Chairman, just to echo what I think Councillor Martin and Councillor Follows have already said, not only do we really have no objection to this, and I think also it's probably an improvement, and I just hope we don't make too much of a meal of this, and we could perhaps, unless somebody's really got something burning to say, move to a vote.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I have to say, I'm not in favour of putting any conditions about this. People don't get up and look out of these windows. I just think it's an unnecessary thing to do. We're overcomplicating it. Let's just get on and move to a vote, in my view.
Councillor Follows.
Yes, I don't believe there is harm for the reasons the Chair explained herself. Thank you.
Could you clarify that, please?
As you say, neighbours don't tend to go and poke their noses up against the windows like this. I don't think there is the harm to need the condition in this particular case. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wanting to speak? No, in that case, I'll go to the recommendation. The recommendation is that subject to conditions 1 and 2 and informative 1, permission should be granted. All those in favour?
That's 8, Chairman.
Thank you. Any against?
None, Chairman.
So that is carried.
You didn't vote, Chairman.
Sorry?
You didn't vote, Chairman.
Oh, well, I am in favour.
Okay.
Forgive me, I am just getting my sea legs back again. It's a long time.
Just to confirm, that's 9 in favour, unanimous.
We are now moving on to B4, WA 2019/0675, erection of a detached garage at 35 West Hill, Elstead. Could I have Tracy, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of a detached garage. I think it is. Let me just... Sure? Yes. Sorry. I just had a blank. Sorry. Yeah, this application is definitely for the erection of a detached garage. I've got written down a double garage. That's what's... So, yeah, for a detached single garage. It's located, number 35, is situated on the south side of West Hill in Elstead. The property is one of the last properties within the road. These photos show the existing site. There's the dwelling, and the proposed garage would be situated here. Elevations. The site currently comprises of a 2-storey semi-detached dwelling. There is an area of hard standing within the residential curtilage to the front, with a hedge-lined post and rail fence to the front boundary. The application proposes the erection of a detached garage featuring a part dual-pitched, part mono-pitched and part flat roof to be situated in the front garden of the existing property. I'd like to draw your attention to the garage of the neighbouring property. When considering the application, this was a material consideration, as it will mitigate against any harmful effects of an interesting roof. The main matters for consideration are the design and the impact on the visual amenity and the impact on the residential amenity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. I can confirm that there is indeed a garage next door which will screen the proposal if we are happy with giving it consent. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I note that the Parish Council has supported it, and I take that very seriously, and note that no neighbours have objected and concur entirely that that other garage would screen it. And I'm sure it will be an interesting roof, but it will be screened nonetheless. So unless there's any other reasons to object, I am in favour of the officer's recommendations on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Anybody else wishing to speak? Then I'll go to the recommendation. Right. The recommendation is that, subject to conditions 1 to 4 and informative 1, permission be granted. Is that agreed?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Any objections? No. Thank you. So that recommendation is agreed. NEMCON, I believe. So there are no items to consider in the exempt session, so that concludes this evening's meeting, you'll be glad to hear, at 8:45, I think it is. thank you very much for attending and putting up with me.